Thank you very, very much for putting this together. Yeah, this is more than I ever expected. I'll try to speak a bit loud in English, and the microphone is only for the video camera, and they're translating me to French. So hopefully, if I'll speak loud enough, English would work, and if French, so there is the earphones, okay? And the fact that I have the phone is not out of disrespect, it's just that this is my only way to track the time. Since I got out of the army, I got rid of the wristwatch. Yeah, that's one of the traumas that you have to take care of. I'll maybe, and I hope it will be okay if I'll move a bit to the beginning of the table, because all this formality is not something that I feel good with. But I was thinking what to talk about this evening, and what I would like to do is maybe introduce myself and breaking the silence briefly, but very quick dive into our book that we released 2 years ago, which I'll speak about. There's a purpose why I'm not going to touch recent events, but actually try to talk about the big picture. I'll try to speak as short as possible so we can have more of a conversation rather than me preaching this evening, but yeah. So I'll maybe say a few words about where I come from. My name is Yehuda, you know that by now. I'm 31 years old. I'm a Jerusalemite. I grew up, I was born and lived in Jerusalem. Many people who hear my North American accent and English get confused. It's because both of my parents are from North America, but I'm an Israeli. I was born in Israel, lived my life in Jerusalem, as I said. I'm a practicing Orthodox Jew. I don't know if it means much to all of you. I grew up in what you would call the political right in Israel. Left and right in Israel has nothing to do with your left and right in Europe. It's not about social economical policies, it's about occupation settlements. I did my high school in a settlement in the West Bank. My sister is a settler today in the West Bank. My cousins were settlers in Gaza before 2005. So that's kind of where I grew up and where I come from. I graduated high school, I joined the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces. In Israel, we have a draft. Men serve for 3 years, women for 2 years. If you're in good health condition, you'll be sent to be a combat soldier, and that's what I was. I was an infantry combat soldier and a commander. I ended my service as a company sergeant. A company is a group of around 120 soldiers. I served a typical 3 years, so from March 2001 till March 2004, more or less the peak of the violence of the Second Intifada. I was 2 years of my time in the West Bank, and out of these 2 years, I served for over a year in Hebron, which is the largest Palestinian city in the West Bank. And even though I grew up in the political right, in terms of my political background, throughout my service, I had many doubts whether what we're doing is the right thing or not. Not always things made sense. But the thing is that when you're a soldier, you always find a way to move on. You know, there is not real time for questions and doubts. And later on, when I became a commander, it was even worse. Because as a commander, you have more responsibility and less time for these questions. And in a way, it was only towards the end of my service, the last 4 or 5 months, I was a company sergeant, not much to do, a lot of spare time. Started to plan my life afterwards, you know, who am I, what I want to do when I'll grow up. You know, these questions that at some place in life should come. And for me, just being there for the first time in this place where, as an adult, I had to think about life through a perspective of a civilian, rather than seeing things through a perspective of a combat soldier, was the turning point for me. Yeah, it was kind of like the first second you take one step out of the box, and things look very, very different. It was a very terrifying moment for me because once military terminology and way of thinking stopped making sense, I found myself in a place where I couldn't justify anymore 90% of actions that I took part throughout my service. Yeah, the way I justified to myself things just stopped making sense. And in a way, it's that strong sense that something was wrong that brought me to where I am today. I had no idea what to do with it. I was far away from being able to articulate it the way I can do today. But I just felt that I cannot go on without doing something about it. So I turned to my comrades, who were the only people that could understand me. And very quick, I discovered that we all felt the same. Yeah, somewhere in the back of our mind, we all felt that something was wrong. And that's how Breaking the Silence was born. We started sitting down in the barracks, talking about things we've done and seen. And the one thing that was quite a shock, quite a discovery for us, was the realization that people back home in Israel, our own society, has no clue, has no idea of what we're doing in the occupied territories. So we decided to bring Hebron to Tel Aviv. That was our slogan. Yeah, we wanted our own society to understand what's being done in its name in the occupied territories. I got out of the military in March 2004, and in June 1st, 2004, we opened a photo and video exhibit in Tel Aviv. 64 people from my unit, all of whom served in Hebron. Our photos on the walls, our faces on the screen. No big plans, no real understanding of what we're doing. It just felt like the right thing to do. And the only thing was that once we opened the exhibit, we found ourselves in the middle of a huge mess. It was the first time that a group of veterans have organized itself this way. Yeah, so we were the story of the country for the week, all over the news. More than 7,000 people came to watch the exhibit in the 3 weeks it was on. We were invited to present the exhibit in the Israeli parliament for an entire month after. We didn't understand what's going on. And in a way, I would say it was the mass noise that the exhibit created, together with the fact that we met other veterans from other units who served in other areas in the occupied territories and had the same stories to tell. It's these two things that brought us to continue breaking the silence to today. And here we are, a bit more than 10 years after. What we do is mainly two things. The heart of our work is documenting testimonies, interviewing, basically video, audio taping soldiers and ex-soldiers about their experience. Until today, we've interviewed almost 1,000 men and women, all of whom served from the beginning of the Second Intifada in 2000 to today. So everyone is more or less my age. Yeah, people are 19, 20 years old to 34, 35. We cross-check, verify these testimonies, and publish them. And the second thing we do is we try to use our personal experience as an educational and an advocacy tool. So a lot of lectures, panel discussions, and many guided tours, visits to the occupied territories. Yeah, so trying to take Israelis to see firsthand what occupation is about. And if I'll try to put into few words what it is we're trying to do in breaking the silence, so the story is very simple. We're a bunch of veterans who believe that our military should be an instrument of defense and not an instrument of oppression and occupation. We're not pacifists, don't get me wrong. It's just that we believe that people should be governing themselves and not be ruled by a foreign army, especially not if it's our army. And that's why, in a sense, what we've chosen to do is to try to use our experience and our knowledge about the occupation to force a discussion about the moral price tag of maintaining a prolonged occupation over another people. So in a way, breaking the silence is about holding up a mirror in front of our society. Yeah? Trying to raise up the one question that I believe is the most important question in a democratic society, and that is, what are our moral boundaries as a society? What are the red lines? To which extent we stand behind our military and when we say no, not in our name. Yeah, it's about basically coming and saying, this is occupation. Take it or leave it. Now, throughout the years, what we've done is we would basically choose topics that we would want to shed light on. For example, Operation Cast Lead in Gaza in 2009. Treatment of minors and children. The rules of engagement of the Israeli military. Experience of female soldiers. Yeah, different topics that we would choose. Put together 40, 50, 60, 70 testimonies from 40, 50, 60 different soldiers. Print it, paste together. This is what soldiers say about the topic. Let's have a conversation. Nothing more, nothing less. Just the testimonies. Yeah, the events, the stories. And trying to have a conversation based on that. And it was around 5 years ago, as we were approaching the 10th anniversary of the Second Intifada, after interviewing about 700 people, we felt that there is something more that we can say by now. And in a way, we've taken upon ourselves the challenge to try to tell the story of how the Israeli military is controlling the Palestinians in the occupied territories. And the result of this challenge, in a way, was this book. I'll maybe say a few words about what is not in the book, and then a few words about what is in the book. Our conclusion, our methodology, some taste from the book, and then I'll conclude. Because if I'll try to go through the entire book, it's going to take us the entire night. So what is not in the book, this is not a book that tells the entire story about how Israel controls the Palestinians. Yeah, Israel has many arms of control over Palestinians that we don't have access to. Our data is soldiers' testimonies. Yeah, so what we're describing is military. Okay? Not judiciary, not the Secret Service, there's many other arms of control. Second, we do not focus on intentions. Yeah, we're not here trying to give you the behind the scenes, so to speak. Because the people who give testimonies to breaking the silence are not the high generals who sit around the table and call the shots of the strategy. Yeah, the highest ranking officers who testified to breaking the silence were battalion commanders, which is quite a lot. Yeah, these are people who commanded 600 troops, who spent 14, 15 years in the military, yeah? But still, this is not the high-ranking generals. Most of the people who testified to breaking the silence, sergeants, lieutenants, regular soldiers, are the people who implement. So what we do claim to say is what is being done and what it's leaving behind. And the methodology is very simple. If a soldier who served in 2001 in Gaza, and a soldier who served in 2002 in Nablus, and a soldier who served in 2004 in Bethlehem, and a soldier who served in 2005 in Tulkarem, and a soldier who served in 2008 in Jenin, and a soldier, they all talk the same. They're from different units, different ranks, different places, different times, but they all talk the same. The story is bigger. Okay? So this is basically how we built this book. Few words about our conclusions. When we came to take upon ourselves this challenge to tell the story of how the IDF controls the Palestinians, the perspective we came from, or what the military is doing in the occupied territories, the perspective we came from is the perspective we grew up on. Israeli Jews, we were taught that what the Israeli military is doing in the occupied territories is defending Israel from terrorism. Yeah, there are terrorists in the Palestinian territories, and we are called to defend the country. You know what? Sometimes it's not only defending Israel, sometimes it's also defending settlements. Yeah, but they are there. It doesn't matter what you think about them, whether you think they should be or not. Today they're there. They're Israeli civilians, so they deserve protection. You know, it might be that when a political solution comes, there won't be there, but for today. So, quote unquote, in a way, yeah, the perspective we grew up on is what the Israeli military doing in the occupied territories is playing defense. Yeah, if I'm allowed to call it this way. The thing is, as we started reading through all the testimonies together and putting 1 + 1, very quick we got to the understanding that playing defense is a very small part of what the military does. What the military mainly does is playing offense. And it's not playing offense against terrorism. It's playing offense against Palestinian independence. And I'll explain what I mean. Usually when we think of military occupations today, and it doesn't matter from which field and perspective we come, it can be international law, it can be international relations, it can be whatever, yeah? The idea we have is that this is a temporary situation. There was a war, you conquered a territory, you can't just disappear the day after. You need to allow some political space for some institutions to emerge so someone can replace you. You know what? In these days, sometimes we do something else. Sometimes we invade countries, take down regimes. But even after we do that, we start what is called nation building. Now, I'm not here to argue whether it works or not. Yeah, the examples in Iraq and other parts of the Middle East, you know, are not that good. But that's for a different topic. But even when we invade another country, the idea is that we are not there to stay. Yeah, that from the second we stepped in, the clock is ticking to when we're going to leave. And that's why it's so important, you know, these phrases, winning hearts and minds and counterinsurgency, and all this idea of, you know, allowing something, yeah, some allied forces there to emerge so you can deal with people afterwards. What we're saying is if you listen to the Israeli occupation through the stories of the soldiers, you understand that this occupation is designed exactly the opposite. The way the military operates is as if there is no end in sight. Yeah, we are not on the way out. We are always on the way in. And some people try to say, oh, there is negotiations. That means we're in the process of transforming power. No. Some people will say because there is a humanitarian improvement in the West Bank, hence there is also political improvement to transforming power. No. We are not on the way out. We are on the way in all the time. Most of what we do is about maintaining, preserving, entrenching our absolute military rule over Palestinians. I'm going to try a bit to speak about our methodology of how we got to this conclusion. We basically have taken all Israel's military actions and divided them to 4 different pillars, code names, strategies, titles. I have no clue what's the right word. These are the 4 chapters of the book. And all these code words are codes that are very familiar to every Israeli soldier and almost to every Israeli civilian in Israel. Yeah? And usually the connotation you have as a soldier or a civilian hearing these words is actually a positive meaning, is a positive connotation. And what we do is we try to compare what people think these code words are and what they actually mean if you listen to soldiers' testimonies. In a way, we're trying to decode these codes. The first chapter is called Sikul. Yeah, Sikul is Hebrew for probably the right word to be, in English would be prevention. The second is separation, הפרדה. The third is fabric of life. Anyone heard this before? And the fourth one is law enforcement. Okay? Taking these four codes and trying to decode them. What I'm going to try to do here in the next few minutes is to decode at least the first one. Okay? Give you a bit of an idea. What do I mean by this? Sikul, prevention. Yeah, you probably never heard this word, but the average Israeli is very familiar with the word sikul. Why? What's the first connotation that comes to the mind of the average Israeli when he hears the word sikul? Sikul memukad. In English, targeted prevention. What is targeted prevention? It's the code we use in the media to describe assassinations. Yeah, so the image you have in your mind is one of the most defensive concepts that you can think of. The ticking bomb scenario. There is a suicide bomber, he's on the way to blow up a bus. You cannot arrest him. So what, you're going to allow them to blow the bus? Of course not. You send a chopper, you send a drone, you take him out, you targetedly prevented him. But the thing is that if you listen very carefully to soldiers to what prevention is, you understand that the concept of prevention, of what you think is defense, in the army today is so wide that every defensive act you can think of falls under that title. And almost every offensive act you can think of falls under that title. Yeah, and almost every military tactic that we use is widened, yeah, from defensive to offensive. Let's take an example, assassinations, because we started with it. So you can assassinate in a preventive, in a defensive way, people that you cannot arrest. But then you move on to assassinating people that you can arrest, but by assassinating them rather than arresting them, you leave a greater impact on the board. Yeah? So you assassinate them and not arrest them. And then sometimes you assassinate people just for revenge. For example, during the Second Intifada, there were few revenge attacks. I'll give you one example. February 19, 2002, there was an attack on an IDF checkpoint near Ramallah. 6 engineer soldiers were killed. The following night, 3 different special forces units were sent to revenge. 1 unit operating in Gaza, 1 in Ramallah, 1 near Nablus. The orders were very clear. Go to Palestinian police checkpoints, 2 o'clock at night. Anyone there is doomed to die. Uniform, not uniform, armed, not armed, doesn't matter. They took 6, we're going to take some from them. At the end of the night, 15 Palestinian police were killed. Only in Nablus they were armed. The 2 other locations, they were not even armed. Now, if you understand the structure, the command structure and deployment of the IDF, Gaza is the southern command, West Bank is the central command. These are 2 different commands. The 3 units that were operating are under 3 different commands. So having 3 special forces units operating in the same night, at the same hour, with the same mission, in 2 different commands, the order for something like this needs to come minimum from the deputy chief of staff, if not higher. Yeah, otherwise it's not possible. Yeah, this is not a story of one soldier, one officer who freaks out and loses control. Yeah, this is from all the way up. Let's take another tactic, arrests. So you start with arresting bad guys. You move to arresting cousins of bad guys. because that's how you put pressure on the family, because that's how you get intelligence, because... And then you move to what we call in the military mass arrests. You go into a village, collect all the men from the age of 18 to 25, from the age of 20 to 40, from the age of 15 to 60, yeah? Different times, different operations, different villages, different ages. And I can go on and on and on and give, just for hours, we can go every tactic, yeah? But the peak of this concept of prevention, yeah, is what we call in the military making our presence felt. I don't know if you've heard this phrase before. The concept in the military says this: if the Palestinians will get the feeling that the IDF is all the time, everywhere, they'll be afraid to attack. So what do you do to make them feel this way? You make your presence felt. Now, in different parts of the West Bank, it will manifest itself in different ways. So let's go to Hebron, where is a place that I served for over a year. In an urban setting, you have an Israeli settlement in the heart of the city. You have 2 military patrols, 1 border patrol, that their job is to make their presence felt. You start your night shift patrol 10 o'clock at night till 6 o'clock in the morning, walk in the streets of the old city, bump into a house. It's not a house we have intelligence about, yeah? When we go to a Palestinian house, according to intelligence that we get, that's called something else. That's not part of these patrols. Bump into a random house, the commander, the sergeant who leads the patrol chooses that. I was for a few months the commander choosing houses, yeah? Bump into the house, wake up the family, men one side, women the other side, search the place. You can yourself imagine the dynamics, what happens when a military unit breaks into your house 2 o'clock at night. Finish searching, go out to the street, throw some shock grenades, make some noise, knock on some doors. Run to the other corner of the street, invade another random house, wake up the family, search the place. And that's basically how you pass your 8-hour shift. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. From September 2000, when the second Intifada started, till today, it didn't stop for 1 second. It's happening right now as we're talking. Now, yeah, the idea is very simple. Every Palestinian needs to feel the military is right here. You never know when we're going to show up, how it's going to look like, when it's going to start, when it's going to end, how many we're going to be. It's to do what we call in the military, ליצור תחושת נרדפות. To create the feeling of being chased, of being pursued inside the entire Palestinian population. If I may, just one more tactic before I wrap things up. Mock arrests. I don't know if any of you heard this concept before, mock arrests. This is actually something that we've been hearing more and more in the last recent few years as the West Bank becomes more safe for Israeli soldiers. Meaning, when I was a soldier during the second Intifada, it was a dangerous place to wander around. So you didn't have too many mock arrests. Today, it's safer for soldiers, so we have more and more of these things. So what's a mock arrest? As it sounds, it's an arrest that is not a real arrest. You have a new unit in town. They just finished training. The first time they're deployed, you don't want the first arrest operation they carry out to be the real thing, huh? So what do? You choose the most peaceful Palestinian village in the area where you are based. Open the aerial photo of the village. Choose a random house. Every structure has a code, yeah? West Bank and Gaza, every piece is coded, mapped. pick up the phone, call the Secret Service, make sure that the person living in the random house that you chose in the village is innocent, and that by operating on him, you are not interfering in intelligence operation and undercover operations in the area. Once you get the go, meaning he's innocent, and you're not interfering in undercover operations, you come in the middle of the night, surround the house, grab the guy, handcuffed, blindfold, as if it's a real arrest. Put him in the Jeep, and move on. After 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, someone goes on the radio, says, end of exercise, stop the Jeep, release the guy, go back to the base and go to sleep. So you're probably wondering, what the hell? Now look, in the military there is many times that you are sent on missions that are fake. It's a drill, and you are not told because you are being tested. But in a mock arrest, you know in advance that it's a mock arrest. And the same level of questioning and wondering that you have, so why the hell to do that, usually soldiers also have. And many soldiers who testified about these things asked their officers, so why we're doing this? And they usually got two answers. The first is very basic. Why to do it? Training. As close training can be to reality, better. So if you can do it in a real Palestinian village, on a real Palestinian house, on a real Palestinian man, better than just training, yeah? But the second reason is where it even becomes more interesting. Think of it. A mock arrest is just another form of making your presence felt. You go in the middle of the night into the village. People wake up. You make noise, right? They see you're arresting a person that they know is innocent. People in the village are not stupid. So they start to ask themselves questions. Why are you arresting him? He's innocent. And then they see that you're releasing them. So what the hell is going on? You're arrested? Is he a collaborator? Yes, no. And they don't have the answers. So they're even more scared. Yeah, because when the goal is to intimidate someone, yeah, when you know the rules of the game, you can calculate. Yeah? When you know what's waiting for you around the corner, you can decide whether you cross the line or not. But when you have no clue what's awaiting, that's when you're really, really scared, huh? In a way, the lack of logic is the perfect logic. And the lack of order is the perfect order. That's in a way why our American publisher called the book Our Harsh Logic. Yeah? I think they got very well Our Harsh Logic. Yeah, that's the name of the book. They got it very well, the idea of prevention, so to speak. Yeah? And that's why actually the title of the chapter is Prevention, Intimidating the Palestinian Population. Because in a way, the defense is intimidating everyone, all the time, everywhere. Because that's the only way no one will even think of standing up to you. Yeah? You need to keep pushing all the time. And in a way, there is nothing a Palestinian can do in order not to be intimidated all the time. Yeah? Just for being a Palestinian, he deserves to be intimidated all the time, everywhere. Because otherwise, we don't have control. Now, you tell me whether this sounds like defense or offense. If I leave for a second the military jargon and I'll jump to the human rights world, collective punishment, this scary phrase, suddenly gets a different meaning. Yeah, collective punishment is not the result of prevention. Collective punishment is the heart of what prevention is all about. Yeah, as intimidating everyone all the time if they're Palestinians. And we can go on and talk about separation, and we can talk about fabric of life, and we can talk about law enforcement, but we don't have the time. And here's a good reason for you to buy the book afterwards. But if I can please just say a few words to conclude. I just laid down the first floor on the way to getting to our conclusion. But I believe that it's already a bit clear why I claim that the actions of the military are offensive and not defensive by nature, and why I claim this is an occupation that is not designed to distinguish between the good guys and the bad guys, but actually designed, to keep ruling Palestinians forever. Publishers want to sell the book. Say the truth, I would like that people would buy the book and read it. But that's not why we published this book. So the publishers gave it, these kind of like dramatic names. I don't even know how to say the French name. The Black Book of the, Our Harsh Logic. But I don't think these titles capture what we're trying to say and what the book is trying to say. When we published the Hebrew book, we called it Kibush Ashtachim. 2 words that in my eyes tell the entire story of what this book is claiming, is arguing. It's very difficult to translate. But if I literally translate it, it would sound the occupation of the territories. Because what we tried to say is that for many people, the Israeli occupation is an historical event. June 1967, there was a war. We occupied the territories. No. If you understand what the occupation is, you understand that the occupation never ended. It never stopped. It is an ongoing campaign of entrenchment, of offensive actions that don't stop for a second. Everything we do, we're reoccupying the territories with our actions. And not only in the sense that every house we build in a settlement, we physically reoccupy the territories. But every Palestinian house we break in the middle of the night to create the feeling of being pursued, of being persecuted inside an entire population, the territories are being reoccupied. In every house we operate on it, a mock arrest, the territories are being reoccupied. In every village we do a mass arrest and we arrest all the men, the territories are being reoccupied. And I think if you accept this and if you understand the occupation and the way we're trying to bring you to understand, if you accept this analysis, suddenly this phrase that is called the status quo gets a completely different meaning. It is not anymore something frozen that you put on the shelf and you can come back 10 years down the road. No. And you can talk and you can negotiate from today till tomorrow and for 20 years. But for 47 years, there is a very sophisticated and very aggressive machine that is digging in, is not going out. The last thought I want to say you might ask why. I also ask myself why. And because I give credit to Israeli generals, and because I don't think that the people behind this are sitting in the room and thinking, how can we abuse more Palestinians? I'll come to it also from another angle. What our critics might come and say, you stupid pricks, you don't understand. It's all about security. If you listen very carefully to every word I said, I never said it's not about security. I said it's not about defense. I give credit to the people behind this, and the only way I can understand it is if it's all about security. What do I mean? If this is a manifest of this national security concept that reads the reality as if we are in a zero-sum game. In a zero-sum game. How you translate that to French? That between the river and the sea, there is room for one sovereign power. It's either us or the Palestinians. And that's why it better be us. And that means the Palestinians will never be free. That's the only way I can understand a country like Israel that for 47 years, its national project, our financial, political, diplomatic, military, wherever, continue the list, resources go to one thing, to maintain and entrench our control over Palestinians. And I think that this is a very twisted security concept. And that's my answer to the critics. The idea that people forever will agree to live without rights and dignity is insane. But this concept holds a bigger problem, I think. The idea of a prolonged occupation is one of the, I would say, in my eyes, the most serious strategic threat to the state of Israel. Because the political mathematical equation that it introduces to the conversation, what it tries to claim, sounds like this. The right of Israel to exist within its international recognized borders equals to the right of Israel to occupy Palestinians forever. Now, the problem with this political equation is that if you put it in front of our Prime Minister, Bibi Netanyahu, his answer is, of course Israel has a right to occupy Palestinians forever. Yeah, if you listen to his speech at the UN, what was it, yesterday or the day before yesterday, where he said, and even before that in other speeches, he said, there is no way we can give completely control to Palestinians. But if you put this equation in front of almost every normal human being in the world, his answer would be, if this is the equation, if this is the situation, so Israel has no right to exist. And that's why I think what we ought to do is to take the sharpest knife we can find in the kitchen drawers and cut this equation in the middle. And say, one thing is the right of Israel to exist. The other thing is the right of Israel to occupy Palestinians forever. Hell no. That should have ended 47 years ago. So I think if there is one thing that I would want people to walk out of here, is being motivated to fulfill that kind of equation and being motivated to fight as much possible the policies of the status quo, of entrenchment. Thank you very, very much, and I hope it wasn't too long.